Brinkmanship of Beornwulf. The bridge crew snapped to rigid attention as Beornwulf strode in, Captain Sigibild pacing at his side. Wulfgar stood beside the command throne, Crozius held high in ritual salute. "Your chapter stands ready, my lord," he declared, the vox lenses of his helm cold and implacable, "your blade and your fury." Edric, enthroned at the auspex array, pivoted in his steel-banded seat, servo linkages whining softly. 6 strike cruisers prepped for deployment, my lord. 2 still under refit, 2 more in transit. Around the command pulpit, the other captains offered salutes that matched their own grim manners. Grimhelm gave only a grudging nod, as close to a fanfare as that hard-edged warrior would ever offer. Osric, buried in a logic terminal's flickering runes, raised a gauntlet without looking up. Godric loomed in dignified silence, towering within his dreadnought sarcophagus, while Hathred, first brother of his company, hovered near to manage tasks beyond Godric's massive limbs. Feolumair stood apart, his battered armor draped in furs and strips of ceremonial cloth. Still recovering from his wounds, he had been summoned to stand in the rank of Wolfsward, though several captains eyed him with caution. Captain Sigibild shifted awkwardly, unused to so many Astartes sharing one deck. Beornwulf returned their salutes with a nod, then stepped to the center of the bridge, his massive boots ringing off adamant plating. Edric spoke first, half turning with a glance to Sigibild. "Given that we are only delivering these priests on a diplomatic mission," he said dryly, "and with barely 100 Astartes including initiates, I assume we do not require the full fleet. Perhaps the Navis Astra Wigathene vessels can be held back." Sigibild, sensing his name in the air, drew himself up a little straighter, awaiting orders. Beornwulf turned to Heorwulf. "What have the Sothiwirdas divined about the pirate raids?" Heorwulf lowered his hood, revealing eyes like a winter storm. "Archmagos Pyrovox's scouts tracked the pirates to an Adeptus Ministorum monastery asteroid, Reliquiarium Vulnerati Martyris." Osric glanced up with a cynical arch of the brow. "Which martyr?" Heorwulf blinked. "What?" Osric repeated, voice flat as iron. "Reliquary of the wounded martyr. Which martyr?" Heorwulf only shrugged, his ornate scout armor shifting. "No idea." Osric shook his head, tapping runes. "Imagine dying for the Emperor, getting a monastery named after you, and no one even remembers your name." Heorwulf carried on with a patient sigh. "The pirates use Reliquiarium Vulnerati Martyris as their base. They refuel at Cebus Astrum, a station within the Manifold Dawn defense grid. Any strike on either will bring their fleet down on us, and they outgun us badly, even with 6 strike cruisers, even if we had all 10. He spread his hands in resigned acceptance. Wulfgar's skull helm dipped in thought. "Then your counsel is brinkmanship and diplomacy," he intoned. "Placate the cult and bring Manifold Dawn into alliance." Beornwulf looked across these warriors, his captains, his blades, his burden, and folded massive arms across his breastplate, thumb brushing the warrior ring on his finger. "If Manifold Dawn supports these pirates openly," Wulfgar continued, "they could claim legitimacy, and we'd have no legal right to challenge them. We must persuade them otherwise, or even force them to admit their own ministorum is compromised." Edric scowled, tapping a data slate. "Assuming they know their priests are backing these pirates. If they deny it?" Wulfgar exhaled, a harsh hiss through the filters of his helm. "The 5-Tower cult has grown for years. They did not emerge from nowhere. They began on Sarathar, the Mother's cult, they called it." Osric raised a brow. "Why Mother?" Wulfgar shrugged. "Some pious nonsense about the ministorum embracing all." Osric snorted. "Religion is silly." Beornwulf's voice carried, resonant, certain. "There were 2 sisters, one a preacher, the other a prelate. A hive rebellion on Sarathar pulled them into a schism. They fled." Cuthhelm leaned forward, frowning. "Are they wanted?" Beornwulf shook his head. "No, the Arbites found nothing. Sarathar is a basket case. They escaped and were taken in by Archmagos Cognitron Feruvus." Cuthhelm scowled. "Why take them in if they caused trouble?" Wulfgar's tone was level, measured, because Feruvus was fighting his own priests on Manifold Dawn. A tower movement tried to secede, to rule the 2 towers. Osric cut in, confused. 2 of the 5 towers? Wulfgar corrected him. "No, Manifold Dawn only has 4 towers." Beornwulf spoke from near the weapon racks. "What are these towers?" Godric's voice, deep and iron-like, boomed from his sarcophagus. Manifold Dawn is a trinary star system. The towers stabilize stellar orbits. Pre-imperial technology. The Mechanicus never could replicate them. Wulfgar inclined his helm. How do you know? Godric rumbled with faint amusement. I was on the original survey with Mentis Sicana and Magos Rimek Zarin. Rimek mapped the reach before his death. Beornwulf nodded. So the sisters took Feruvis's side? Wulfgar spread his hands. We do not know. But after they arrived, the Two-Tower Movement, the Four-Tower Loyalists, and another group calling themselves the True Way, they united under the Five-Tower Cult. Things have been stable since. Beornwulf exhaled, rubbing his chin. The sisters, Lady Seraphina Gratner, now styling herself Matriarch Bishop, and Preacher Lucia Gratner. He hesitated, eyes darkening. I do not know Seraphina, only that those who cross her tend to suffer accidents. But Lucia, I do know. Grimhelm growled from where he leaned against the bulkhead. I think I almost shot her once. Beornwulf laughed, short and cold. Then you've met her. His gaze darkened. If her sister is anything like her, they will be a formidable force. Grimhelm flexed a gauntleted hand over his chain axe. So we kill them, Wulfgar answered flatly. Assassination is a gray area, especially involving ecclesiarchy figures. That is a matter for the Inquisition. For a moment, there was silence. Then Osric broke it, voice sardonic. We would have fallen if Manifold Dawn hadn't brought its legions during the Orc War. We owe them a favor. Beornwulf's thoughts drifted, remembering the death of their captain, a hero's death worthy of saga song. Yes, he decided, better to have them on our side than against us. He straightened. Nitwertha will admit a Five-Tower presence. The bridge erupted, Edric shouting security worries, Grimhelm roaring about purity, Osric's muttered curses, even Feolumer bristling in his furs. Elfric, silent until now, raised a single hand. A crack of psychic force snapped the air, rattling instruments across the command deck. Silence fell instantly. Elfric spoke, voice like a winter wind. We have already arranged to monitor them. The seers will keep them under observation. They will not walk among the general population. Beornwulf nodded, folding back his cowl. The closer we keep them, the easier they are to track. Nothing happens on Nitwertha without my Sothawerda's knowing. We will control them. Beornwulf allowed a faint grin to break his stern face. Truthfully, it was the deacon's idea, he admitted. Better to keep the faith's quarrels close where we can manage them. One by one, the captains nodded, not because they liked it, but because they trusted him. Beornwulf's voice rang out like a war horn. I am taking Nitsidu and Ridleoma out of Novice Astra Wigathane's service. Wulfgar turned to him, helm expressionless but his silence telling. He understood. Adric bristled in his throne. They are the Navy's only battleships. As Flotward, I should make that decision. Wulfgar lifted a hand, silencing him. Beornwulf met Edric's eyes with calm iron. Where the fleet is concerned, you command, I, but this is a temporary aberration. Edric fell back into his throne, smoldering but silent. Beornwulf turned to his old friend with a small, grim smile. I will take Eotensip to Manifold Dawn. We will deliver the priests and grant the cult a measure of access. If I know Preacher Lucia, that will mean more to her than a legion of starships. Her cult will spread, and with it her influence, or her sisters. Beorthum grinned, tapping the Aquila on his breastplate. Good, my Void brethren will accompany you to the heart of the enemy. Beornwulf offered an apologetic shrug. Sorry, Beorthum, I am transferring the 7th to Nitsidu. Beorthum's grin faltered, but he nodded to Sigabild and stepped aside. Beornwulf looked next to Beornwulf. I want you with the 7th. You, Nitsidu, and Ridleoma. Wulfswerd Feolumer will go with you. Feolumer gave a booming laugh, stepping forward to clap both captains across their shoulders with a meaty palm. Grimhelm spoke up, voiced gravely with suspicion. What manner of workings stand behind this? Some ruse? Sinwulf snorted, unimpressed. And then we politely ask if it would be nice if raids along the Incoloris border might stop for a while. His tone dripped scorn for this game of regicide. He would rather see a clean decapitation. Beornwulf's voice turned iron. No. First, Godric, you will take Meriship. There is a regular patrol, the battleships Gladius Ecclesia and Bellum Despectus. You are to take them out. Cripple them. Don't destroy them. I want them late, not dead. A collective breath drew across the bridge. Osric was first to voice the unthinkable. A single strike cruiser against 2 Retribution-class battleships? That is insane! Beornwulf's grin was wolfish. That is why you are going with him. You will take Mayorship. Osric let out a strangled groan, crossing the deck to Godric's massive form. Look what you've done, he sighed. Hathred, standing near Godric, merely exchanged a knowing glance with the dreadnought, saying nothing. Beornwulf's voice hardened, command flowing through every word. With those 2 ships delayed, Captain Sigibild will hold temporary command of Nitsidu and Lieutenant Osbjorn of Red Leoma. Thurceship and Merowithship will rotate into Navis Astra Wigathane's normal patrols. Edric inclined his head, not liking it but wise enough to hold back. Then a spark of realization crossed his eyes, and he looked to Sigibild. Both you and Osbjorn, he asked, suspicious. You've run the Queen's way before? Sigibild gave a sly nod, a small smile on his lips. Edric's expression eased just a fraction. Genius, he thought privately, but left the praise unspoken. Beornwulf pressed on. Your orders, he continued, raising one gauntleted finger, are to neutralize Cibus Astrum. Do not destroy it. Its value is too high. Just put it out of the game. With the astropathic relay on Cibus Astrum down, the monastery on Reliquiarium Vulnerati Martyris will be blind and unable to call for help. Of course there will be pirate ships in the area, but as it happens, Archmagos Pyrovox has sent a very important convoy from Incaloris, escorted only by a single Carabath. He let that settle, the tension winding even tighter across the bridge. Then he smiled. And that is where Elfsip will be. Tunbald, you are to accompany it, and you as well, Cuthhelm, in case these pirates have any warp psychers among them. Cuthhelm's eyebrow lifted. And a single strike cruiser is expected to handle an entire pirate fleet? Beornwulf spread his hands innocently. Oh, I am sure you can cope. It's not as though there would be anyone else to help, is there? His tone was playful, but there was an undercurrent that told Cuthhelm something was being held back. The librarian kept his silence, glancing toward Tunbald, who only nodded slightly. Cuthhelm sighed, settling into a spare gunnery seat. Wulfgar stepped forward. And the rest of us? Beornwulf met his gaze. Edric, you and Wulfgar will take strike cruisers Grendelship, Dweimorskip, and Gostship. With you will be Sinwulf, Hlafric, Phaond, and the 8th Assault, and Grimhelm's support company as well, all 4 of you. In total, just over 50 warriors, half our chapter as we stand. He drew in a breath. Burn Reliquiarium Vulnerati Martyris to the ground. Edric's eyes were cold. What happened to diplomacy? Beornwulf met his stare with a look like flint. One forge has engaged in masked warfare against another. They must pay penance. And if Manifold Dawn takes offense at the destruction of a pirate fleet, then Archmagos Cognitron Feruvis will have to build his own scaffold. Edric stared at him a moment longer, then slowly drew his seeks, the black blade catching the ship's lights like a serpent's fang. Fake word, he intoned. Beornwulf drew his own seeks in answer, the polished war iron engraved with runes. Geofon Hālgengas. Around them, the ship seemed to fall silent, as though the machine spirits themselves listened and approved. The bridge began to empty as the captains peeled away, moving to their assigned duties. Grimhelm marched off with his support company. Osric trailed after Godric, still muttering under his breath about the suicidal odds. Cuthhelm exchanged a quiet look with Tunbald before heading for the Librarius. Captain Sigibild paused before Beornwulf, saluting sharply. My lord. Beornwulf returned the gesture, and Sigibild turned away, striding toward the embarkation decks with a flush of excitement on his features. Commanding a battleship Nitsidu was no small prize. Wulfgar remained, folding his arms across his Crozius and gazing at Beornwulf. You are taking us to war with barely any pieces left on the regicide table. Beornwulf gave a small, knowing smile. They do not know that, and a blade that strikes swiftly will have less work to do. Wulfgar's helm tilted slightly, voice low. And if Cognitron Feruvis turns out to be a traitor, a heretic, and mobilizes the entire Manifold Dawn fleet and its ground armies against Nitwertha? Beornwulf laughed softly, the sound like grinding iron. Cibus Astrum is the only refueling station within strike range of the Arcana Inclusium. In our hands, we will scuttle it before we withdraw. Incaloris will side with us, and their border is very long. Carabaths are not much against the Dawn fleet, but Feruvus would be forced to hold ships on his own frontiers to protect trade and shipping. He gestured calmly toward the star map flickering on the command dais. And to get to Manifold Dawn, they must pass through the Queen's Way, through the Arcana Inclusium, which we can close at will. Whether Castel or Sarathar side with him, they cannot send aid or raw material. If Grimness's forces back him, their largest border is within Caloris as well. Any war would starve Manifold Dawn to submission before it could win a single victory. Wulfgar inclined his helm. And we would starve too. Beornwulf's grin turned feral. We hold the Rust Belt. Only we can navigate it. The squat holds to the south will keep trade flowing within Caloris. In a war, we win every time. They can cut our branches, but our roots run too deep. Wulfgar was silent, letting the logic settle into place. A part of him wondered, had Beornwulf planned this contingency for any Forge's betrayal, or had he always been preparing for war with Manifold Dawn? The thought twisted in his gut that his chapter master might have been waiting all along for the right moment. Then he felt foolish for questioning it. Beornwulf was the chapter master for a reason. Wulfgar inclined his helm again, turned, and left for war. Beornwulf left the bridge, striding down the echoing corridor toward the embarkation deck. Ahead, the arched blast doors to the Otensip loomed, runes of warding faintly glowing in the lamplight. Waiting for him, leaning against a bulkhead, was Osric. The old ronsmith looked half amused, half resigned. "I wanted to see you before we parted," Osric said, voice rumbling from behind his half-masked helm. He held out a stained, oily rag, folded neatly. Beornwulf took it, unfolding the cloth carefully. Inside lay the Sildeth Noddle. The weapon had been reforged for an Astartes gauntlet, a masterwork of function married to beauty. Its bone handle was carved in the likeness of a warg in full stride, every detail caught in ghostly grace. At its pommel glimmered the chapter master's seal, subtly engraved in blackened steel. For a long moment, Beornwulf simply looked at it, a rare expression of quiet awe crossing his battle-scarred features. Osric gave a faint grin, shrugging as though it were nothing. "A chapter master should carry at least one proper weapon," he remarked. "I know what you think of your war gear, but this felt right." Beornwulf nodded, the weight of memory and brotherhood settling on him. "Good luck, Osric," he said, voice low but honest. Osric clapped him on the shoulder, iron fingers rattling his pauldron. "Ferd," the runesmith replied with a grin. Beornwulf holstered the Sildeth Noddle, feeling its presence against his hip as though it had always been there, as natural as breath. With a final nod, he turned and stepped through the blast door. It hissed shut behind him, sealing him within the ship. A moment later, a low, powerful vibration rumbled through the deck plates, and the Otensip slipped its moorings. Outside the armor-glass viewport, the ship's engines kindled like a sunrise, propelling the massive strike cruiser into the void, toward war, toward destiny.